In this video, I chat with Anton Gunter, the really nice South African, about moving freight from the UK to the EU since the 1st of January 2021. Well, I've seen on TV where the fellows there trying to convince everybody that Brexit was a huge mistake, and he's there with his piles of paper, and he's saying, for this I have to have that, for this I have to have that, for this I have to have that. And I thought, well, that's all well and good getting one person to explain his problem, but is that the overall problem of the system, or is that individual's problem?
It, paperwork is one thing, but then a lot of customers are already exporting to South Africa, or they're exporting to Australia. And
Yeah,
so the paperwork and the bureaucracy is exactly the same. The big problem is there's an apathy for change. So in other words, people
yeah,
they want the ease. So yes, there is a change in paperwork. Yes, there is a change of transit. Yes, at the moment there's a massive problem with transport, but that's going to work itself out. For me, the one thing that sort of shone through is when, I don't know if you remember, before Christmas, there was massive queues outside France because France had closed the borders, not because of Brexit, we hadn't even
yeah,
left yet, because of COVID.
yeah.
And they were saying, this is Brexit, this is Brexit. It wasn't Brexit's fault because Brexit hadn't even started yet.
That's
And
right.
so France closed the borders because, and then eventually the British Army had to start testing drivers to get them through. It was a COVID base. Now, there's still a hang up about that because people are saying, well, Brexit are causing delays. Well, yeah, Brexit is causing delays. But if you prepare, if you do your export clearance and you do your import clearance and you have the right documentation, there shouldn't be any delays in terms of Brexit. But what there is because a lot of the large hauliers, a lot of DHL, famously DHL, UPS, FedEx, they're all struggling with the sheer volume of work they didn't anticipate. I'm hoping that people are going to wake up because in July the 1st is when we start doing things for real. Because at the moment, we've got vehicles arriving in the UK, just going through the
Yeah,
terminal, and customs clearance can be done at a later date. So we're enjoying this sort of honeymoon period. Yeah, Brexit's okay. We don't need the right paperwork. But in actual fact, come 1st of July, people are going to get a rude awakening if they're not ready. We've
yeah,
had 4 years to be ready. And to not be ready now is like, okay, it's criminal. And I
yeah.
get COVID took our minds away from it. And for a lot of the last year, I was thinking more about COVID than I did about Brexit. But in the back of my mind, we always knew the process was going to be what it is now.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the UK government didn't score points because they kept talking about ERI numbers, got to have an ERI number, got to be this, got to be that. And everyone
Uh,
thought if we get a trade deal, none of this is going to matter. When in actual fact, the only thing that a trade deal is going to affect is your amount of tariff you're going to pay. The
yeah.
process would have been the same whether we have a trade deal or whether we don't have a trade deal.
Uh, yeah. So the on the small business side, if you're a retailer in the UK and you're selling online, which is what a lot of them have done because of COVID, and they suddenly discover that they've got customers in France or Germany or Spain, more likely Spain than anywhere else. What can a retailer do to avoid somebody in Spain having to pay extra to receive the product?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Unfortunately, there is nothing they can do because, okay, so there's a set of terms that we trade under, or that buyers and sellers trade under, and it's called the Incoterms. Incoterms have been put in by the International Chamber of Commerce, and they include things like Ex Works, free on board, free carrier, DAP, which is delivered at place, delivered duty paid. But under every one of those things, your responsibility is different. So let's say, for example, you're in Luxembourg, I'm in the UK, I sell a coffee mug to you. Okay, now under normal circumstances, I would include the cost of the transport to you in Luxembourg, and
Yeah,
I would include the cost or the value of the mug, and then obviously my margin. Well, that's exactly the same now, except you've now got a customs entry, both in the UK and in Luxembourg to do. So there's a cost for that. So your
yeah,
price goes up. There's going to be duties and taxes depending on what the value or what tariff you're going to be using, but at least you're going to pay VAT. But
yeah,
then in every other country, if you're VAT registered, you can reclaim the VAT back.
yeah.
So there is going to be a cost implication, and there isn't anything you can do about that cost implication unless you're going to absorb the cost yourself, but then your
Mhm.
margin's going to come down. So it's no different to buying stuff from America or South Africa or Australia. It's exactly, we're now on a par.
Okay, yep, I understand that. Is there any help that you can give to your customers with filling in all the forms that they now feel they have to fill in?
So generally speaking, a commercial invoice they would generate anyway.
Yeah,
And that goes without saying. If you're selling something, you need to generate an invoice, and all the terms now need to be on those invoices. You need to generate a packing list. Then you
yeah,
need to engage with a freight forwarder, a customs agent, a haulier, transport company, anyone who can assist you with the import and export process, or export and import process. Importantly, and this is where a lot of people are getting stung, because they think trade deal means zero taxes, but rule of origin is really, really important. And when I
yep,
say rule of origin, if I sell you a mug, then that mug has to have been manufactured in the UK in order for it to be zero rated in Luxembourg. And that's
yep,
the same for any product bought from anywhere in the world. The trade deal is only between products manufactured in a country of origin, i.e. the UK or the
yep,
EU, and then vice versa. Product of destination is either the product has to be zero rated. You have to either be manufactured in the EU or the UK. If you
yep.
buy that mug from China, imported into the UK, you're going to pay duties and taxes for customs clearance. If
Yep.
I then sell it to you, you're going to pay duties and taxes on it as well. So there is a double whammy. So people need to be very careful. Rule of origin is probably catching out the most amount of people.
Right. And does the rule of origin, that goes for parts in the finished product as well?
Yeah, there is a certain percentage, and it's up to sort of individual manufacturers to work out how that is. So, for example, we've recently started importing plastic polymers, little plastic bits and pieces that get melted down to make sheets,
Yep.
and then they get turned into little plastic things. I'm going to call them things that go into flat pack furniture. Like when you put a
Oh,
screw
yeah.
in and you get that little. So, and then they manufacture in the UK. So basically, the plastic comes from Portugal.
Yep.
So it comes in this one form. But then, if I then import those finished products to Spain, for example, although it's come from Portugal, forgetting the fact that it's come from the EU, but because I've changed what they look like and what they can do, that then becomes a product of origin of the UK.
Right.
If,
Yep.
if we if we look at something like a boiler or something like that, it depends on the percentage of change that has happened. If you import a certain, like let's say you import the heat exchange from China or Turkey, for example, but then you manufacture the rest of the goods to go into that, then that product will still be considered product of UK origin.
Right.
If,
Yep.
however, you buy tires from China and you then bring them into the UK and you're going to import or export them out to the EU, and they're going to be tires and they're going to stay tires and you're not going to do any work on them, then they're not product. Then they become product of Chinese origin and you pay full duties and taxes.
Right. Yep. I think I understand that part of it.
Basically, a freight forwarder will be able to tell you if your product is has been changed significantly.
Yep.
And it's almost like if you've got a round tennis ball and you make it square, well, you've changed the shape of, you changed the use of it. Therefore, it is a product of UK manufacture or European manufacture.
Uh-huh.
There are issues, and I'm trying to be really positive. I'm trying to paint positive pictures, but there are issues with paperwork, understanding what now needs to be had. We're looking to work with a company who exports meringues that are covered in chocolate. Now,
Yep.
that's cakes to Germany. Now, you would think, okay, well, that's just cakes. You've got to import them. But because they're made with eggs, and because obviously the chocolate is made with dairy and milk, you suddenly go into vet certificates and you go into lots of certifications that are needed. And I think that's the other thing that there's a complication between understanding and not understanding and blaming Brexit again. We can blame Brexit for everything. Let's be honest about it. But it's
Yep.
an understanding. I guarantee that in 6 months' time, we'll know what needs to be done. And everyone will go, well, we can't blame Brexit anymore because we now know what needs to be done. So, it is a bedding process, but it's going to get a lot easier when people understand. We could probably ship stuff to South Africa with our eyes closed, knowing full well what we need. And most of our customers can ship with their eyes closed. And when it arrives in South Africa, we know our South African agent can customs clear it because they know the process. I think the one thing that's becoming really apparent is that as of July the 1st, when we do proper customs clearances and no longer doing delayed clearances, the time scales is going to be what's the issue, because you've got a short time that it leaves France to get to, let's say, Calais, or sorry, to Dover, that you then got to do your customs clearance. So I think that's what's going to catch people out, time scales. But if again, if they contact a freight forwarder, we're telling our customers to give us the paperwork when they've got the paperwork, and then fill in the details as they get those details.
Yeah.
And then we can do the pre-clearance, or we can get everything ready. So when it arrives, we can go, bosh, there you go, there's your clearance done.
Yeah. One thing that I remember from my childhood more than anything else were the number of trucks that would trundle through our village with a big sign on the back that said TIR. And if you one parked up and you went up and had a look at the back, it was sealed. And as I understood it when I got slightly older, was that they were sealed when they were loaded and unsealed when they were unloaded, so that the truck, the trailer, the paperwork all went through and it was cleared from when it was loaded to when it was unloaded. Is that something that you can see coming back?
That's already there. You know, so you talk about the TIR cable. That's the cable that, now, interestingly, the cable that locks the vehicle, that's been done for years. And even though we've never left, or even though we've only just left, or Brexit, that's not even a Brexit thing. That's an immigration thing. So lorries have to have that cable on, because if that cable is broken, then obviously you could have clandestines, as they called, on nothing to declare. And so that's been there all along. So you're absolutely spot on with regards to, if a vehicle is traveling in bond, it's sealed in France, so to speak, and it's then unsealed at place of, or it's checked when it arrives at UK port. Now that's not happening at the moment. So there are sporadic checks, but at the moment what's happening is there literally is, a vehicle can just turn up and drive straight through, because you have up to 6 months to do your customs clearance. But we're obviously doing the customs clearance now, paying duties, any duties, taxes now. And so for us, it's more a case of that process is already in place. For export out to Germany, for example, we've got to do things called a T1 document.
Yeah.
So a T1 document basically allows the vehicle to travel from, let's say, Scotland through England, although not independent yet, but through England.
Yeah.
But then when it gets to France, it doesn't have to do the customs clearance. It can do the customs clearance in Germany. So it allows for the duties and taxes, if applicable, to be paid in Germany by the end user. So yeah, those processes are coming back. They have already come back. They're very relaxed at the moment, but certainly that will be ramped up when 1st of July comes.
Yeah, so that could actually solve the Scottish fisherman's problem, because they load the whole lot onto a truck at the market, and the truck's sealed and away it goes.
No, I don't. I know there was problems with, it was lobsters or something like that, and I'm not.
Shellfish is a particular issue, because it's, I don't know if you've ever been to the Western Isles of Scotland, but it's kind of tricky getting from there to the mainland, never mind to Europe.
Yeah, but come on, man. There is Scottish salmon. It isn't one of Scotland's biggest exports. Their salmon to China for processing, and there's also a lot of, I say kidology, but there's a lot of stuff going on that we're finding with customs clearances and understanding customs clearances in Europe. That, hang on a minute, you don't do that if you import that from South Africa. Why are you doing it for importing from the UK? And it's insisting that this paperwork has to be done, that paperwork has to be done. And eventually, I think the adults will, or the children will be replaced by adults in control, and we'll be able to, that paperwork will just be seamless. And I think the more we get used to the processes, the more it'll become electronic. And the more electronic it becomes, the simpler it's going to become.
Yeah, one thing that I was surprised about, and again, it comes back to the hauliers, is that I know that in commercial aircraft, the 737s and 747s and so on, the company can speak to the crew in the air, and they can do it either by radio or by sending them something that gets printed out in the cockpit or whatever. I spotted on a TV news program where a truck driver was being spoken to, the door was open, and behind him, his teleprinter was going. There was something coming off the teleprinter, obviously from somebody had sent him something. And I'm thinking perhaps truck drivers have in the cab the same facility as aircraft crews have in the aircraft cockpit, so that if he has a problem with his customs at Dover, surely he can just get on the phone to his base, his HQ, and they can send him the correct paperwork.
I think that's also used for next job. If you're picking up from, or if you're dropping off in Birmingham, picking up from Newcastle upon Tyne, you need to know where your next pickup is, and you can't possibly, and things might change. So that might be a way of them communicating. I think nowadays with modern technology, and that's the other thing that no one has mentioned. We've got so much modern technology that it's not going to be a problem if you don't have, if you've got a new load, the paperwork will be with you sooner rather than later. I mean, we in the first sort of 2 weeks, we had about 6 or 7 Polish lorry drivers turn up at our warehouse in Telford, even though they were delivering in Oldham, to come and have their paperwork stamped because they thought they had to get the paperwork stamped in order to complete customs clearance. And there's not that process. I think modern technology is going to mean that, the way I understand is that at some point, we're going to get an AMPR type system. So we have to link export clearance and import clearances to vehicle registrations or trailer registrations. Yep. And eventually what's going to happen is we'll do the export clearance, and that will then transfer to the main customs computer. When that lorry pulls up, by the first boom, it says, yes, all your paperwork's in order. It lifts up, you drive off, and you drive up to the next gate where you got border force standing saying, no, we want to inspect your vehicle, pull over to the side. And then you've got, your port authorities or whatever, your health authorities. So I think it's also going to become a lot more automated. And I think once Dover wakes up and once all the big ports wake up, then to modern technology, then we're going to come. And again, it's like we've had 4 years, guys, 4 years since we voted. All the arguing, we weren't going to vote to go back again. We were leaving. That's what was said. So why is it that we've taken, people can develop apps in minutes nowadays. Yeah. So I think we've got pain until July. I say pain until July. I think people are not experiencing pain yet. But I think 1st of July is when they're going to be putting the drawbridge down and saying, right, okay, now you've got to do customs clearance straight away. So anything that's not customs cleared, you will be held up. And that's when I think, so with sea freight, if you don't do your customs clearance, you incur extra charges. Yep. You incur demurrage, you incur key rentals. There's lots of things that you'll incur. So, but that's not being felt by road freight from Europe as yet. But I think that's going to come. If hauliers are carrying 12 customers' goods and only 3 is customs cleared, 7 people are holding those 3 up and holding that lorry up to picking up another load, then I think that we're going to start incurring charge. And that's when people wake up, when it hits their pockets. Boggling.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I've first thought of you is because you've got the prior experience of exporting from and importing to the EU. And anybody who has that sort of experience knows how the EU works with regard to customs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so UK to EU was lovely. You had a pallet, you rang up the haulier, said, I've got a pallet to go, jobs are good. However, if you send something from South Africa, like we did Hong Kong to France, French customs is no different to UK customs. The paperwork is exactly the same. And the one thing that's becoming apparent is that, I don't know if it's because people have sort of are trying to hide from the fact that the process is actually quite easy, or if they just don't understand that, or they're not putting 2 and 2 together. But if you're already importing from a third country, let's say I keep mentioning South Africa for obvious reasons, but let's say you're importing from South Africa, the process of bringing a container into the UK is no different to the process of bringing a lorry load into the UK from the EU. Exactly the same. There isn't a difference. You've got to still still got to do your customs clearance. You've got to present your freight to a customs official. You've got to present your paperwork to a customs official. It's exactly the same. And there are people who can remember the old days before we joined the customs union, and the amount of paperwork that but that paperwork's not going to be there. It's all electronic now. We do customs clearances electronically. Although we print them off and we keep them on file, it's all done electronically now. So what I'm happy about is the fact that, yes, it is extra work. We've seen obviously we've seen 100% increase in EU clearances because, we weren't doing them before. But it's little things that we're educating a lot of people. And that's what I'm really enjoying at the moment, is because actually people are listening. And once they understand the process, and I keep coming back to, because that's all it is, this process, they're actually a lot happier. They're almost ecstatic because it's not that difficult. It's not, it's easy to do the process once you understand the process. And I can foresee in a year, 2, 3 years time where we're actually looked at as someone who go, okay, well, they left we are easier because we're an island, and I get we're easier because we're an island. But I do think that a lot of countries will look towards Britain and say, okay, how did they manage leaving the EU? How did they manage, and where are they now? Because I don't think we can, although the pound for some obscure reason keeps getting stronger against the euro and the dollar. I'm not sure that's because the pound's been given as vaccine or something, but it does seem to be getting stronger every time I look at it, it's stronger. It's 1.14, I think, to the euro now. And so, everyone who said the economy is going to tank, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Okay, it's only been 2 months. I get it. But I think once the big hauliers, the big courier companies like DHL, UPS start sorting out their issues, and then freight starts moving a lot quicker, because that's the biggest thing at the moment we're seeing is delay in transport.
Yeah.
That's the biggest grudge bear with a lot of customers and with a lot of people that we speak to. It's the delays. But then there's delays in China. Last year, this time, a container would have cost you $2,500. It's now at $14,000 from China to the UK. So there's issues everywhere.